Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Mark and I thank you so much for coming by today. The world around us is bursting with color and it's very easy to take it all for granted. Whether it's in our homes, the tools we work with, or even the food we eat, color brings to life the most vivid details in everything around us. And for me, to live in a world without color, well, that would be pretty boring. But to have a full conversation about color, we could spend weeks. Instead, I tried to put together a very quick color tutorial which will help younger artists get a better understanding of what color is and how to use it, as well as a bit of a refresher for more established artists, which I hope you'll find something useful in it, something you may have forgotten. We're going to talk about a lot of things in a very short amount of time, so in a discussion like this about color, we should probably start with the most common colors around us. Now, you've probably seen some kind of color wheel at some point in your creative journey. It's an incredibly helpful tool when making decisions in choosing colors to see how they relate to each other. On my color wheel, I've added shades and tones, which I'll talk about in a minute, to lend a visual idea of what happens when we add black or white to each of the colors. The best place to start when talking about colors is probably with the primary colors. There are three primary colors: red, yellow, and blue. They're primary colors because they can't be made by mixing any other colors to get them. Now, because there are three of them, they're in a color setup known as a triadic scheme. That means there are three colors that sit equally apart from each other on the color wheel. And what's really cool is that when we mix any of these two primary colors, we get a secondary color. Like if we mix red and yellow, we'll get orange, and orange is a secondary color. Mixing red and blue gets violet or purple, and if we mix blue and yellow, we get green. They're all secondary colors. And because there are three secondary colors, they're also set up in a triadic color scheme, just like the primaries. Now, if we keep mixing these colors, adding primaries to secondaries, then we get another set of colors, a third one called tertiary color scheme. This means the third level. So we have primaries, secondaries, and tertiaries. These are colors like blue-green, where we simply mix blue and yellow to get green, but then add a little more blue to get blue-green. Other tertiary colors are red-violet, blue-violet, red-orange, yellow-orange, and yellow-green. If we look at the color wheel, you'll notice that across from every primary color is a secondary color. That secondary color is a complement to the primary color. Why? Because if we take a primary color like yellow, its complement color across from it is violet or purple, which is made from red and blue, which are the other two primary colors, so together they make all three primary colors, and that's why they complement each other, because they can't be made from adding any other color to get them. Colors that lie across from each other on the color wheel are known as complementary colors. And another cool thing about them is that complementary colors also contrast with each other. And what is contrast? When two things are placed beside each other and they're strikingly different from each other, then they contrast from one another. With color, the same thing is true. However, the best example of contrast is actually the ancient Asian symbol for balance and harmony called the yin-yang. This symbol puts black and white, the two most visually contrasting colors, or non-colors as we call them, beside each other in a design where they appear as two fish in a circle that is set in infinite motion. It's probably one of the most classic and recognizable symbols in the world. What's even cooler about the yin-yang is that if we were to spin it really fast, the black and white would eventually settle into a neutral combination of black and white, which is a balanced, equal shade of gray. We can also apply complementary colors to the yin-yang symbol and see how they contrast too. And again, if we spin it really fast, the same effect happens where the two colors combine to a balanced neutral color. The difference is that balanced neutral color is brown. And that's how we make brown, by mixing complementary colors together. And depending on which pairs we mix, the brown can be warm, cool, or neutral. And adding more of one color or another will cause that brown to take on the properties of the color we're adding. Another set or scheme of colors is known as an analogous scheme. This is when colors are beside each other on the color wheel. Things that are analogous are similar to each other and relate like links in a chain. What makes this scheme so useful is how easy it makes picking out colors for our work. An analogous color scheme can link 2 to 4 colors on the color wheel. Another way to use colors in a related chain is by looking at them as values, which is how we see things from light to dark. When we draw or paint a subject or a scene that's full of shadows and objects that are too close or too far away, It can be a challenge to recreate them accurately. If we change a colored scene into a black and white scene, we can see the values much more clearly. We can also figure out where the darkest dark areas are and where the lightest light areas are, and all the grays in between. A value chart is made up of tones from white to gray to black. They can be blocked out or done in what's called a tonal gradation. That's a smooth transition from white to black. Then, applying that value chart to an actual scene, we can see the different tones and the ones that match up on the scene and to the value chart. We can even make a value chart that is designed like a color wheel. This can be helpful if we want to make a value chart showing tints and tones of a specific color. So, choosing a color, also known as a hue, we can apply black and white to change that hue to make it lighter or darker to help make a new value chart for that color. Adding white to a color is called a tint, and adding black to a color is called a tone. Adding both black and white to a color, or gray, is called a shade. If we take a blue hue and add black and white or gray, we can create a value chart for what's called a monochromatic color scheme. This is a set of tints, tones, and shades of one specific color. By adding more white or black, we can change how intense the color of that hue is, which is what we call the color's saturation or chroma. Adding more of that color can also change the intensity too. Creating a monochromatic color scheme and using it in a painting or drawing lets us explore a whole range of just one color to get a unique and interesting result, like this group of frogs. Most visual artists are fascinated by color, but it can sometimes be confusing to understand how to make it work for us. I've always loved the science of color, especially how it relates to speed, shape, and sound. The speed of color has to do with the way light waves reflect off a colored object into our eyes, where our brains process the information and we can recognize what we're looking at as being a red ball, a green chair, or a blue door. More directly, the speed of color has to do with how quickly our eyes are attracted to one color over another. The color spectrum shows us all the colors that our eyes can see, starting with red and ending in violet. The light waves that react with red move faster than all the other colors. The light waves that react with violet move slower. Knowing the speed of colors can be helpful in creating work that can direct a viewer's eye with specific intention. For example, a red fire truck will immediately attract a viewer's eye more than a blue delivery truck or a gray building or even a green background. The cool thing is that infrared and ultraviolet lie outside the color spectrum because our eyes can't see them. They're cool because scientists discovered these invisible colors, and we now use them with technology, from the infrared beam in our TV remote to the ultraviolet machines in hospitals used to sterilize equipment. For me, I don't know, I just love the science of color and think this stuff is pretty amazing. When we talk about the science of color, it's worth mentioning two famous artists who devoted their careers to this subject: Johannes ITTEN and WASSILY Kandinsky. ITTEN was the one who developed a 12-step color wheel and how to create contrasts by mixing the colors on it. Kandinsky developed theories on the temperature of colors and how shapes and colors relate to our emotions and our moods. He also had a rare condition known as synesthesia, where he claimed that he could hear colors and see sounds. Synesthesia affects people in different ways by miscrossing over how our senses respond to outside stimulation. And through this condition, Kandinsky created a massive body of work based on his perceptions of color, shape, and sound. Among the theories that these artists developed was the relationship between color, shape, and sound. In my research, there have been many interpretations of these relationships, so they often become subjective and kind of confusing. For me, I've found the theories presented by Kandinsky and ITTEN hold up well, and I've taught much of them for years. But in connecting color, shape, and sound, there are just too many conflicting theories out there, so I chose to explore them in a way that made sense to me, which leverages the theories of Kandinsky and ITTEN. As for the primary colors, well, I found that red begins the color spectrum and is the warmest color, suggesting anger, passion, alertness, and security. It's represented by a square, which is a strong, impenetrable shape formed by 4 right angles. Musically, it aligns with the tone of A, which begins an A chord scale. The color yellow is a warm color and suggests humor, joviality, brightness, and light. It's represented by a triangle, which is sharp but not rigid like a square, with only 3 angles that vary in their degrees. And musically, it aligns with the tone of C. Blue is a cool color and suggests calm, peace, relaxation, and repose. It's represented by a circle which is smooth and in constant motion. Musically, it aligns with the tone of E. If we lay out all the colors along with their corresponding shapes and musical tones, they may look like this. Again, this is my interpretation based on the work of ITTEN and Kandinsky and through my own perceptions, which I've actually incorporated into my own artwork and music throughout the years. What I really love about the science of color is how we can actually compose artwork, designs, or even songs to affect the emotions or moods of people who look at it, hear it, eat it, or even wear it. The red square is like a security guard always on defense, or like a fiery dancer who's ready to tango. The yellow triangle is like a preschool teacher who's aware and cautious but always ready for fun and learning. And the blue circle is like a yoga instructor, always calm, peaceful, balanced, and centered. With orange, it's a combination of a red square and a yellow triangle, so it's like a sports coach, ready to have fun but also play hard to win. Green mixes a yellow triangle and a blue circle and sits right in the middle of the color spectrum. Green is neither hot nor cold. It's neither exciting nor dull. Green is an organic character, as passive as grass, whose personality is defined by the colors around it. Violet, also called purple, is a strange blend of a red square and a blue circle, and a color associated with deep emotions because it possesses the intensity and heat of red, yet the calm cool of blue. So the two colors are in conflict, which is why we can connect so emotionally to the color purple. A neat thing about violet and purple is that back in the Middle Ages, it was a very expensive pigment to make, so only the wealthiest people could afford to have purple clothing, and this is why purple is known for being the color of royalty. For me, it's fun to look around our world and see the associations we make for certain colors, whether it's a red fire truck, a stop sign, or hot peppers. The comedy of a banana peel, the childish fun of a school bus, or the bright, fresh taste of a lemon. Or especially with the calm of the blue ocean, or the huge expanse of a blue sky, or even a casual pair of blue jeans. But with all this talk about color, are there times when we should use color and times when we shouldn't use color? The answer is actually yes. For me, in my line art, I often don't even use color and just leave it as black and white. Other times I will add color to enhance it or give it a very specific look, like adding sepia to make it look old. When I do work in color, I enjoy working in a range of schemes, whether it's monochromatic or using a full spectrum of color to get the effects I want. Whether with traditional paint or pencil, or even with digital drawing. Here you can see 3 different portraits done in 3 different colored styles. The first is actor Bill Murray, who I painted with a monochromatic blue scheme using watercolors. The second is Willem Dafoe, another actor, who I created digitally and did in a monochromatic red scheme. Lastly is singer and musician John Lennon, who was done in traditional pen and ink and then colored digitally, both with a monochromatic scheme for his face and accent colors around the face to make that blue color really pop. Sometimes I'll even create a piece using just one color, then digitally change it to make it work better for what I need it for. Here I used violet ink to create this drawing, but later decided to change it to black and white using Photoshop so I could add color to it. The cool thing is that I can change it back again, or I can change it to any color I want. One of my favorite ways to apply color to my artwork is to apply what I call color accents. This means that I only add color to specific areas to give the drawing the influence of color without overwhelming it with too many colors, which can become unnecessary distractions. When adding these color accents, I try to plan ahead and make sure that I'm placing the strongest, most dominant color in the areas where I want the viewer's eye to go. Then, I'll add a less intense color to the decorative areas to contrast with the main color to keep everything balanced. There are really no rules to adding color accents. I just enjoy having fun with it while trying not to overwhelm a drawing with too much color and trying to keep the whole thing balanced visually. Another way I like to apply color is through something called a limited color palette. This is when we limit ourselves to using only 1, 2, or 3 colors in a piece. It may sound easy, but when we work with a limited color palette, it can be very challenging to keep our values correct. Or, if you remember, our darkest dark areas and our lightest light areas. So when we limit ourselves to just 2 colors, like using the complementary colors of yellow and violet, it forces us to be very creative with our decisions in how to keep the piece balanced. The same is true with analogous colors, like a range of yellows to greens, which can present a whole different range of challenges, but can also be a whole lot of fun too. One limited color palette that I really enjoy working with is what I call a master's palette, which is burnt sienna, yellow ochre, and Prussian blue. And it reminds me of a palette that the old masters might paint with. This is a really great palette to use because it stays true to a primary color scheme, in that it's made up of 3 primary colors, a red, a yellow, and a blue, except they're in their muted or dull forms. It's also a triadic color scheme, or a set made up of just 3 colors. It means that these can also be mixed to make secondary colors as well, making it a limited color palette that actually has the potential to be unlimited. So there are so many ways to combine colors, it can be overwhelming when choosing the right ones for our work. That's why this little book that I bought back in the 1980s, A Book of Colors, which I talk more in detail about in another video, has been one of my most useful tools throughout my career. It's an incredible reference whether in design, fine art, fashion, or illustration, or even just for fun, to see how combinations of colors can come together to create very specific moods like youthful, dreamy, energetic, or luxurious, or how to just use a single color like red or blue, and how to create a whole range of combinations that will work in our drawing or painting. Now, I bought this book years ago before the internet was invented, so nowadays this kind of information can be accessed online, making the internet the greatest possible reference tool for all kinds of artists. And lastly, I wanted to talk about mixing colors. Mixing colors is probably the most fun you can have as an artist, especially as a painter, because mixing colors gives you full control and access over how the colors come out. And it can be very frustrating if we run into problems. Even here, I'm mixing colors that sometimes they don't behave the way I want them to. So it takes some trial and error to get the colors right. And here I'm just playing real quick just to give you a demonstration to show you how to build certain colors. Here I'm making a basic color spectrum, just the primary colors and the secondary mixes, but it can be very frustrating unless you spend quality time trying to get your colors right. Colors can turn to mud very quickly. And here you see, by mixing primaries and secondaries, I'm making a range of browns. Right there you can see I'm just mixing blue and orange together just to see what I get. And now I'm mixing all the primaries together to get a brown that comes from all 3 primaries. And you can see here. And then I'm going to mix all the secondary colors to see what kind of brown I get from that. So here you can see these are the different mixes of browns and just the different ranges, which can be controlled with whatever you want to put into it. Then when we mix all of them together, we get sort of a neutral brown. Here are some pieces that I've done over the years that you can see incorporate different techniques and contrasts and values and all the things I've talked about in color just to get the effects I've wanted for each piece. I've had a lot of fun throughout my career making the kind of art that I've always wanted to make. It took me a long time to really understand color and understand what I was doing to get where I wanted to be. And now, as an older, mature artist, I'm kind of getting there, but I still have so much to learn, and I love learning. Well, I hope you learned something from this for yourself. Thank you so much for coming by and spending your time watching this video. I hope you'll subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. Stay well, stay healthy, and God bless.